All right, welcome back to the Elias Makos Show. Now, we told you last week if you had a Hudson's Bay gift card, you better start spending them. Now, Hudson's Bay facing the possibility of liquidating its stores as soon as today. Let's find out the latest now. We go to Susan Krashinsky Robertson from the Globe and Mail, retailing reporter over there. Susan, welcome to the program.
Happy to be with you.
And you're not the Globe and Mail reporter that Mark Carney yelled at yesterday, right? You're not. It's someone else, right?
No, different one.
Different one. Okay, very good. So, Susan, sorry, we just did a whole hour on that stuff. Susan, give it to us here. What is the latest on Hudson's Bay?
Yeah, so Hudson's Bay was in court yesterday seeking approval under this creditor protection process that it's under right now to begin liquidating all of its stores. And that's a process that, if the court approval comes through, could start as early as this week. And so we're just waiting to hear what the judge's decision is right now. But certainly they were sort of in court basically saying we are out of options. We are hoping another option emerges. They are still hoping that they can find an alternative plan and maybe remove some of those stores from a liquidation sale if that indeed kicks off. But things are looking pretty dire right now.
Yeah, it sounds like game over. What is the Hail Mary pass? What is the Hail Mary that could possibly change that?
Yeah, there are a few options. I mean, so just being in liquidation doesn't necessarily mean that it's over, but it is obviously a big problem for finding a future path for a retailer. You know, one of the things the judge said in the courtroom yesterday was that, you know, he wanted to make sure you're not basically selling the jewels out of the crown and compromising your ability to find a buyer for this business, which is clearly what has to emerge now is new owners, new investors. The business cannot continue to run as it stands right now. It doesn't have enough money. It's losing money. It's in debt, and it has been unsuccessful finding enough additional financing to continue to operate as a retailer. The only financing it's been able to find has been just enough to allow it to run liquidation sales as of now. That can always change, and certainly they are going to begin running a sales process for the business. That's the next step as well. And so they're hoping that a buyer emerges that could provide some alternative future plan for the Bay.
I was speaking to the producer of our program here, Lola Calder. We were discussing during the break. She mentioned that she went to the Bay yesterday and she was disappointed. She was looking for sales and deals. None were to be had. I mean, I hate to say it, but for the listeners here they want to know when they can start going to Hudson's Bay stores to maybe snag something on liquidation. What's the timeline there?
Yeah, that all hinges on the court approval. So we are just waiting to hear what the plan is. For now, the liquidation sales have not started. You're right. So there are whatever discounts you're going to find in store right now are the regular discounts. So I would just sort of say, watch this space, watch the news, read the Globe and Mail, if I may say so. We'll have a story out when the court approval comes through, and we'll have all the information there. But for now, no sales have begun, and so we just have to wait and see what the court approval is and what the plan is for the liquidation.
All right. When we're talking about Hudson's Bay, right, it's not just the Bay stores, right? There's also some other parts of the company, Saks Fifth Avenue, Saks off Fifth locations in Canada. Can you just maybe tell us, when we talk about Hudson's Bay, what is the entirety of the Hudson's Bay?
Yeah, so the entirety of the Hudson's Bay used to include the Saks business. The parent company that owned Hudson's Bay bought Saks a number of years ago. They also bought Neiman Marcus last year. So those retailers all used to be under the same umbrella. At the time of the Neiman Marcus deal late last year, the corporation was restructured. So Hudson's Bay is now a standalone Canadian retail company, but a vestige of that old ownership is that they still continue to operate all the Saks and Saks off Fifth stores in Canada. That's about 13 locations. They operate them now under a license with the separate Saks Global company. So those stores also would be part of any liquidation stores. They would also be closing down as soon as we know what the next plan is.
Last week when you were on this program, we talked about the gift cards and the points cards. Has anything changed on that front? The gift cards, $24 million is what you told us last week, is still out there in Canadians' wallets and drawers. Has anything changed on that front?
Yeah, that's the last number we had from the court documents. I suspect it's a little less because I suspect some people did race out and try to use their gift cards over the weekend. We heard that redemptions of gift cards are up. So people are out there spending their gift cards, but is unquestionably still millions of dollars out there Canadians holding outstanding gift cards. Something has changed since last week, which is that now the company has said they want to put a deadline on the use of those cards. So they're going to give shoppers until April 6th to use those. And so now your card is not worthless, but you're working on a time crunch. So my advice to shoppers would be to get into stores and spend those cards as soon as possible. The other thing that's important to know, of course, is that in a process like this, everything is fluid, right? So things can always change. So I think the sooner the better. I would not blame anyone for maybe waiting for the liquidation sales to start so they can get some deals, but I wouldn't sort of sit on those gift cards for too much longer. And on the points, nothing has changed. Unfortunately, those points are now still functionally useless. The company has frozen its loyalty program. No earning points, no spending points. And so unfortunately, at least for now, loyalty members are out of luck.
All right. So listeners, you got to use your gift cards ASAP. With Susan Krashinsky Robertson from the Globe and Mail. Susan, let me ask you, is the department store dead?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a question I'm getting a lot right now. And, the answer to big questions like that is rarely as simple as, we might think. Certainly the department store is a bit of an antiquated retail model, right? It was sort of a retail model built for another day. But we have seen that department stores can work when run properly. I mean, just look at another Canadian retailer, Simons, right? They run a department store and they are building additional stores right now in quite expensive real estate, places like Yorkdale Mall here in Toronto. That's a company that's expanding on a department store model. You also have on the higher end of the market some department stores that seem to be doing quite well, like Holt Renfrew, like Harry Rosen. So it's not as though this is dead entirely. But that said, the model that the Bay works on is probably dead in the sense that, these huge hulking stores, way too much space, way too much merchandise, not run well, not invested in, not staffed properly, not maintained. That is a model that is unquestionably dead because, the fundamentals of retail is building a space that people want to come to, spend time in and spend money in. And if you want a department store to work, it has to be very meticulously run and very well operated.
It's interesting, Susan, because whenever I have this discussion or I discuss with our listeners, Hudson's Bay, I get listeners who send me text messages and they bring up Simons. And they say, I'm going to Simons now. And they've expansion mode. They got the downtown flagship. They've got one in the West Island here at Fairview Point Clare. They've done so well on that front, and they bring it up as a place that they enjoy going to. Let me ask you, at the end of the day, the name Hudson's Bay. If all the stores go away, do you think that name will have some value that it'll be sold off at least, and it could continue in some form?
There are options that exist that include that kind of selling off of the intellectual property of the Bay. The branding of the Bay is quite powerful. Those iconic stripes, everybody knows. So Certainly among the options for this company is some kind of a sale of its intellectual property, if not a sale of any of the store operations themselves. That's something that under the sale process that they're about to kick off, that we'll see what emerges in terms of interest for the company. Without that intellectual property, though, the store operations are pretty much useless. So if they were to sell off the intellectual property on its own, that would be pretty much a sign that nobody wants to buy the stores themselves, even a smaller footprint of the stores themselves. So that's all options are essentially on the table right now. Everything is being considered is what I would say that we know at this stage. But what emerges throughout this sale process will really remain to be seen.
Susan, those stripes have value. I tell you what, I love those stripes, and I'm sure a lot of people love them as well. Susan, listen, I know when we get the news breaking, you'll have it first over at the Globe and Mail. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
That's Susan Krashinsky Robertson, retailing reporter over at the Globe and Mail.